So I take great joy to be with you this morning and appreciate the invitation, the time to be with you. Let me make some quick introductions as we get started. This is a plan that I can introduce already. This is already a couple of years old. And you'll be hearing noises in the background. It's certainly likely to be one of these guys. It's very, very similar to the ages of my older children when I started thinking about what it is to be in missions, to be able to do missions, and specifically in medical missions, as I had the opportunity to see a Japanese doctor's tale, a documentary of a Japanese doctor going to the interior parts of China to preach the gospel and to live out doctor's humanitarian work, and in doing so, giving his life for what he believed in. And as I saw that as a young boy, it touched me so deeply. I wondered what it is to, first of all, live out your faith, or what it would be like to die for what you believe in. I didn't necessarily think so much about Afghanistan where I ended up in terms of my humanitarian medical work. Especially as I was going through medical school, Afghanistan was going through its dire straits. You all know without me having to explain what happened just in the mid-90s with the Taliban. As I started going into Afghanistan and traveling in Afghanistan, I picked up this one pattern I would hear over and over again, and that is people approaching each other and saying, and certainly in conversations saying, if it wasn't for our neighbors, we would be so much better off. And I began to pick up this pattern quite a bit in different conversations, and I realized, this is not just an Afghanistan issue, this is a human issue. Whenever we go through a problem, it's so much easier for us to blame someone else and say, if it isn't for this person or this situation, I would be so far better off. I think I had so much to learn from the Afghans about this than I even imagined as I started working there. For Texas, I'm not exactly sure what that says about Texas, but there you have it. 99% Muslim, 48,000 mosques, and no churches, no established over-the-ground churches in the country. In fact, there used to be some churches before the Taliban time, and as soon as even the Mujahideen, the freedom fighters, came in, before the Russian times, they actually took down some of these churches. And, history would have it that we used to have Sikh and Hindu communities thriving in Afghanistan. As a country, it was known as the Switzerland of Central Asia. Imagine that. How stable it must have been once in the 50s or 60s to be called that. And then for a nation to go through the troubles that it went through for the past now 35, 40 years and a bit more. 28 million people and 32 languages. Most of the people that I come across in terms of my medical or community health training are actually illiterate. That doesn't mean that they're not capable people. They're very capable of taking in everything that you can teach them and reproduce it verbatim to people that they need to then go on in training. And they do it just mainly through pictorial tally sheets and just verbal and drawings. So it continues to be the #1 opium producer in the world, and I always have to remind myself that most of that opium comes to the West. So when we blame a country for what it does, we always have to also be mindful of whether we have a role to play in the tragedies that other people experience. One of the worst refugee situations the world has ever seen. Anywhere between 6 to 8 million refugees, people who are displaced. As you know, now the world is seeing the displaced people to be one of the worst refugee situations the world has ever experienced. Now, both of the Syrians and number 2 in that population dynamics is Afghans. Just recently, as of just a month ago, Pakistan decided to send close to 1 million of the refugees back to Afghanistan, which causes its own interesting dynamics. And EU has followed that by sending close to 200,000, or having the pact to send about 200,000 back to Afghanistan. Life expectancy in the country is pretty low, and many of the children, 1 in 4, or even less, more than that, would die before the age of 5. So into this situation, I had the opportunity to go in with an organization that I continue to work with to do what we call community centers in rural areas in order to give certain privileges that the urbanized would have, but give those same privileges within the rural areas. Because even to this day, about 80% of the Afghans continue to live in rural areas. Out of that 28 to 32 million, that's a lot of people. And so here we have a medical facility right in the middle. I don't think my pointers will be able to go right there. And an education facility, a communication facility, and even a guest house where people from outside can come and stay and train this community right here in any of these faculties. So this center caters to about 16,000 people living all around these mountains that consist of about 39 villages. And this community is very unique in the sense that they are made up of a good mix of all the tribes, at least all the main tribes, Pashtun, Tajik, Uzbeks, and Hazara, and also some sub-tribes that make up most of this community. So while we do this in the rural settings, in the urban settings, one of the things that we run mainly is this Institute for Leadership Development. And this is where we get to, although we don't get to call it a Bible study, especially in the Islamic Republic setting, we run these kingdom principles classes for a couple of semesters and introduce them to things that they've never heard about. Servant leadership that Christ emulates more than anybody else in the history. Time management of resources, anti-corruption rules, things of that nature, and we get incredible opportunities to share about our faith as a result of these lessons taught in this setting. For my work, I have the privilege of overseeing a few different urban clinics along with some rural clinics as well as that we run, along with some training programs in family medicine that we run in the city of Kabul. So I know that many of you guys are very interested to hear, although I might not have the time to go into great depths, as I've already mentioned, to hear about the Taliban experience. And it's something that I've come to now realize as an eye-opener for myself, more than anybody else. And I'd love to share a few of those thoughts with you. This is one of the most rural places where we work, and as you can see just from the sense of the picture, right in the middle we have this medical clinic, and to the right is one of the only education facilities that caters to the 25,000 people that live around these mountains. The entire population is made up of Pashtuns, and these are the Pathans that we know from Pakistan. Pashtun people group are in fact one of the largest unreached people groups in the entire world. They're made up of the Pathans in the western part of Pakistan and the southeastern part of Afghanistan, together called this Pashtun people group. So this entire community had actually